everyone. Thanks for tuning in today for another live episode of Geospatial Distancing. My name is Abby Lehman, and I'm with L3 Harris Geospatial. And every Thursday, we broadcast live with new topics and new experts for a notably informal panel discussion about all things geospatial and remote sensing, as we collectively try to keep our sanity a little bit during COVID-19. So this is our fourth week of doing geospatial distancing. And once again, like I do every week, I make you this promise. I'm bound to get better at this eventually. But in the meantime, till that time, and before we start nerding out, I want to introduce this week's panelists. So first up, I want to welcome again my colleague at L3 Harris, Austin Coates. He once again joins us from his home office in Lakewood, Colorado, where he's working like a boss from home and working like a dad for his beautiful baby daughter the rest of the time. Say hello, Austin.
Hello.
So for those of you that missed his first appearance on geospatial distancing, I'll go through his rap sheet really quick. He's done work for NASA, JPL, the DoD. He carries published author status in several remote sensing publications. And of course, he's in Colorado, so he's a fan of all the classic Colorado pastimes like rock climbing, fishing, and of course, microbrews. He's also an integral part of launching a product that we had called Precision Pass, and it focused completely on UAV data collection and validation. And that's why I asked him to come back. And as soon as I introduce our next guest, I think it'll be obvious why. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce him. He is the host of Do You Know Drones podcast. He is capable of eating 30 chicken nuggets in one sitting. Please welcome, from Juniper Unmanned, Mr. Jason Souci. Say hello.
Hello.
So Jason has been a remote sensing and GIS scientist for 18 years. He's an Air Force Academy graduate. He has a master's in space operations, which is ridiculously cool, from CU. He's a level 3 thermographer, AUVSI certified remote pilot. He's a CrossFitter. I don't know what else I can really say. I freaking love talking to this guy. He's great. He's a lot of fun. And before we really dive in, I want to introduce my marketing colleague, Matria Gracing, who joins us from her office, home office, in Broomfield, Colorado. She is monitoring your questions as they come in and then directing them to the panel, as she does every week. Say hello, Matria.
Hello.
Now remember that at any point in the webinar, you can submit your questions using the Q&A panel that's right there along the bottom, and we will make sure to address those. So not a big shocker today, obviously, we're talking about drones, and we're gonna start with the topic of just, what are they being used for right now during COVID? And it's something that Jason obviously has been exploring a lot on his podcast, but I'm actually going to begin by swinging it over to Austin because I know that he has a lot of his own questions, because the material is just really interesting. And I think that'll kick off a great discussion for this week. So Austin, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So actually, yeah, right before this, 1 second before, we were like, okay, what are we gonna start off with? And Jason was like, I just read this amazing paper on drones and remote sensing. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And then it came 10 o'clock. So I know. So Jason, actually, what did you just read? Let's start there.
All right, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. Great question. So I'm gonna back up. The reason why I read it. So in Connecticut, they are using, they're testing for a flatten the curve type of pilot project, a pandemic drone. And it's a multi-agency or it's actually multinational multi-agency effort. And this particular drone is using really cool technology. It's using thermal, and we'll get to more of that in a minute, but it's also using a RGB camera with some pretty crazy machine learning and remote sensing engine on the drone itself. It can actually, they've tested this they haven't tested all this together, but the paper that I just read that was published this year, and the research dates back to 2017, it's about using image registration and spatiotemporal filtering, there you go, there's a geeky word for the day, to essentially map the frequency of like the upper chest so you can actually get a breathing rate from a video image. Combining that with thermal, you can get a temperature. Combining that with artificial intelligence, you can actually look at you can actually extract, and they've been doing this in the military for a very long time. You can actually track individual people, and you can convert that blob into like a line, and then you can measure distances between to see if people are actually social distancing. And like, they turn red when they're within 6 feet, they turn green if they're far enough away. But they can also take a look at the limbs and monitor the limbs. So if you're like, your arm comes up to your mouth, then either you're sneezing or you're coughing. Obviously there's a little bit of, things there, but they're putting this all in one drone, and they're piloting right now in Westport, Connecticut.
That's insane.
Right?
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff lines up. The one thing that jumped out at me was the breath rate. Like, how do you stabilize a drone and then have it smooth enough that you can now see like breath inhalation?
That's a great question. So it has obviously they have their own filtering that's built into the onboard computer. So It actually takes, if I'm looking at this, and I'm not gonna do it justice because basically they stabilize the video using signal processing.
Okay.
Then they take the video tiles of just the upper chest to like reduce the data set. So obviously they got to extract the person, extract the upper chest, and then they're able to do, they call it frequency magnification of the video to be able to see the sinusoidal process of the breathing.
Nice. That's pretty crazy. So do you think, this kind of gets a little bit big brothery. So does this thing like fly along, track everybody, and then does it try to identify the person as well? Does it have like, and the little part we didn't talk about was facial recognition and tying it back to like you?
No facial recognition. It's not doing that. It also is equipped with a speaker. So if it's seeing all of these things in confluence, it has certain things, and it will basically, and they're doing this in Daytona Beach. They're doing this in Chula Vista, California. They're using just dumb speaker drones to, instead of putting law enforcement in risk that have to make contact with these large groups, they're just sitting in a drone and saying, hey, y'all need to get out of here and, disperse. So there's adding more intelligence to that to be like, hey, you need to disperse because of this. Like, you're too close together. There's a risk, but that guy's coughing. That guy has an elevated temperature. Y'all need to get out of here. So, and they're mainly just using it in public spaces. They're not doing it at private residences. They're not using facial recognition technology. That would be the resolution. And they're doing this from about 150 feet away.
Okay. All right. That's still kind of intense to fly down and be like, hey, dude in the blue jacket, you seem to be sick. And then like have the drone spin around and be like, everyone, the dude in the blue jacket's sick. And then just like everyone scatters.
I like that your justification, Jason, for why it was okay is that, well, the resolution wouldn't be that good anyway. So
it wouldn't be that good.
Sure, it's fine. We're really high up, I'm sure.
It's really far away.
Yeah, exactly. 150 feet is like, ooh, but then at the same time, you're like, yeah.
But anyway, they're testing that, and it's cool research. The research is out of the University of Southern Australia and Dragonfly out of Canada. My buddy, Patrick Amassiana, is the COO. There's just some cool stuff that is happening because of COVID-19. Just, necessities breeding innovation, and it's kind of cool.
That's incredible.
Actually, sorry to interrupt you, Austin. That was something we were talking about when we were kind of planning this conversation. Is just, I definitely believe that scarcity leads to, creativity, innovation, that kind of thing. And we talked about, these are not new drones that people are going out and purchasing. These are things that people had, like, I guess, in their storage closets. Not really sure. But, they're finding new ways to do these things with drones. And I'm just wondering what'll happen, after this is all over and people have had the chance to really think through what they can do with it.
That's a great question. I really think that people in the drone industry are trying to use not just this event, but like everything's trying to go contactless or virtual right now. Drones are sort of the ultimate in that, as far as I can do an inspection without actually being there. I don't have to climb something. I can just send the drone. I can do that in construction, real estate, any industry. I can deliver a package or a medical sample or a test or something without ever driving, have a driver, drive up to your house, drop something off. There's no contact. I can just like Google Wing. I just read they did like 1,000 deliveries last month. It's in Virginia, but they did like 1,000 deliveries last month. And I mean, that's real. I mean, it hovers above the house, lowers down a little package, drops the package off, you grab it, the drone flies away. So those sort of technologies are looking to accelerate. It's a good opportunity right now to educate the public on what drones can actually do. In a contactless environment, social distancing is a real thing. Like, what can remote sensing actually do? What can these delivery drones do? So everyone's using this as a platform to, at least in my industry, to put pressure on some regulators to say, look, this is gonna happen. There's a need for it right now. Let's propel the conversation forward. So I think you're gonna start to see more of this, because I mean, on my podcast, I talk to people right now and they're envisioning hundreds, thousands of drones with specific missions all over the world. And even in a specific area, I mean, looking in just like maybe the Bay Area or something like that, having like thousands of drones delivering packages. We saw there was a joke. People were delivering toilet paper. I tried it. It works. It works. You can deliver toilet paper with a drone. Not that hard. But people were doing that and they got some buzz. And, some people were, there's just some interesting things that are happening that it's going to just continue the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm actually wondering too, you're talking about, like deliveries and that kind of stuff. This brings up another question of, are these individually piloted drones, or is this a thing where it has to be able to scale and it's like one person, flying a bunch of them at the same time? How's that work?
That's a great question. So there's both. There's individual missions, sort of the ad hoc ones where it's still an individual pilot with a human in the loop flying, like the pandemic drone. The pandemic drone is going to be a human in the loop system with an individual pilot, individual platform. Autonomous deliveries are going to be autonomous because a lot of them are going over, say, 30, 40, 50 miles. And they're using beyond visual line of sight waivers, or they're operating in other countries, they're going from island to island. And those systems are being set up so that they have unmanned traffic management systems. They have this sort of peer-to-peer link between the customer base or the user and the pilot. They have a very robust system that's being developed that's allowing them to scale this infinitely, right? Hundreds of drones, thousands of drones. And companies, Wing, Zipline, Valancy, tons of companies out there that are doing deliveries all over the world, they're building out these systems so that they can basically create an airspace digital twin. You guys have probably heard of digital twins before in construction management. They're trying to build one in the airspace that includes, airspace geometries, NOTAMs, terrain, ground infrastructure, obstacles, drone landing zones, all of these things sort of built in, but that's all just data. It's all data. And they need to have, so there's two different ways to look at it. You can either build that system and keep that data up to speed and keep it current and keep it accurate, or you can have sort of a sense and avoid system, right? A sense and avoid system that is either using acoustics or visual or LiDAR or something that's allowing the aircraft to manage itself in the airspace. So there's two different camps. I think, in my opinion, the best of both worlds is likely going to be the reality. So I think there's just a lot of really cool opportunities that are moving forward very, very quickly.
Nice. So as you walk through that, I'm thinking about like the outside of my house. So I've got a big tree and a front door and like not that much yard in the front, but I do have a bigger yard in the back. Like so these drone delivery systems, they go above your house? Do they look down and then say like, where's my best drop zone for my package? Do they figure out like, nope, like I'm going to set some sort of GPS coordinate out there? Like how do they go through navigating this 3D world like ad hoc? Like I've never had a drone delivered to my house. So what do they do? What's the setup?
Well, I think so. Think about it. Like I just recently did like a bagster, right? Like those bag dumpsters. I just moved into a house. I have a bunch of boxes I'm trying to get rid of, and all this new furniture with boxes. You actually have to tell the system where you're going to put it, and the user is taking the responsibility to make sure it's clear of obstructions, it has enough space, and where exactly it's going to be. So I imagine these systems are doing that. They're using user prompts to say, deliver to my driveway. Or if that's not possible in some areas, they're actually looking to do some sort of last mile delivery system where the drone will take it to a centralized location, right? and drop it in a park, right? The park 2 blocks away. Go to the park, get your package, walk it home, right?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was wondering because it's like you gotta hit a pretty small target to be
Yeah.
like here's my house and I can give you like the GPS coordinate of the center of my house, but like you've got to have a pretty good GPS to be able to hit like my sidewalk or something like
Correct.
that. So, all right, and then on that too, I was wondering like my tree outside. I like your hybrid approach of it flies in, sense and avoid, and says, oh, there's a tree there, but like maybe next time it just kind of back propagates that into its model and it goes, I know there was a tree there last time. I don't have to reconstruct this tree. I just know where it is now and I can land quicker.
Yeah, and I think that's another really cool area of technology that a lot of people are going to in all industries is either edge machine learning and artificial intelligence or sort of the back end system of the, to be more computationally efficient. You can do, more math, more science. Just to be able to do that, pushing it to the edge and recognizing components, recognizing things, recognizing people, trees, components on power lines, whatever happens to be, doing that automatic recognition so that they can pare down the data set to look at what they actually care about. There's a lot of noise in all of these pictures, a lot of motion, you've got the prop wash, you've got lots of jitter and noise. Removing all of that so you can just concentrate on what this specific user is interested in. That I think is the key where things are going right now. And remote sensing in large part, and all of the things that we use in our arsenal, and we've been using them for years, that's what's allowing us to do all of this today. And it's going to get better.
Yeah, yep, I totally agree. Do you think that, so I'm kind of thinking of the compute side of things now. So your pandemic drone, that was a lot of computationally intensive things that are going to happen on board that drone. So you have like power issues. Like how long does that thing fly for? If it's flying a thermal camera, an RGB camera, it's also got some board on there that's got a GPU probably running on it. It's got a CPU. That is like, there's a lot happening on this thing.
There's a lot happening. So I don't know, just to be fair, I don't know all the details. I don't know if everything's happening on board. I don't know if things are being streamed to the, just a TT&C stream down to the user, and they have a massive compute system down on the ground. That's probably more likely, at least today during the pilot project phase. But I do know that like there are, NVIDIA chips and GPUs that are very small, that are very powerful, that can fit on these drones. And if you have a very specific mission, it can do that mission very well, like pipeline monitoring, effluent detection from pipelines, things like that, where you have a specific sensor, a specific mission that can, and you can train the computer to look for what we're looking for. That's exactly what remote sensing is all about. Yeah, I think that's absolutely where the industry is going to be going based on what I've been, hearing for years.
Yeah, no, I agree. We just wrote, it's a little bit different, but we just wrote a proposal for a new satellite constellation that would be edge compute. And so imagery is very heavy data, whereas vector data is pretty light. So if you do all your computations wherever you are, and then you pass back just some like vector coordinates, that's gonna be a lot lighter than an entire say a hyperspectral cube or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot, So thinking of your kind of distributed network of one guy managing many drones and having the data come back, like maybe you don't have imagery come back, maybe you just have a couple of polygons come back, and
so, absolutely. Simplifying the problem as much as you possibly can is, I think, the overall goal. I mean, at least within the utility space, I know that's kind of the big problem. These are massive data sets, including LiDAR, imagery of multiple modalities, thermal, RGB, ultraviolet for corona detection. There's a lot of different imagery types that are being used here. Making sure that on the decision-making side, because inspectors, even scientists, people have been doing this for a year, years and years and years, it's subjective. So the overall goal is to make it quantitative.
Yep.
So that's the overall goal. People want this to be quantified. You can see that, and I've seen that in the past 7 years in all industries related to drones and remote sensing, even just remote sensing at large. It's just drones are a little bit more of an accessible remote sensing tool, right? It's it's really nifty flying ham sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want repeatable results. You don't want, you want to, you sort of want the human in the loop as far as like, if I had to take control of the drone, I could. But in reality, like all of the measurements and everything, you want that done by a machine and you want it repeatable over and over and over.
Yes, that's huge.
Yeah. So yeah, I think on the utility side, that's like, as you were talking through that, I was totally envisioning a scenario where you're flying a pipeline and maybe you've got some edge compute happening. So you're picking out things of interest. Maybe that's coming back to the operator, and then it just says, hey, like I've already computed whatever. I'm telling you, there's something interesting here. Maybe fly another loop or maybe do something else. Is that something that on the, kind of on the flight management side of things, is it kind of easy now for people to have a tipping and queuing system for their drones, or is that still like in the future, like hopefully someday it will be easier?
I would say it's still in the future. Tipping and
Okay.
queuing is still, in my opinion, a mode of thinking that a lot of remote sensing people understand, but not everyone in this industry is a remote sensing person. So they don't completely understand what you would be tipping and queuing, right? Are you using one drone to another drone, doing a high altitude flight to go to a low altitude flight? When I see that, people have been talking about it, but I haven't seen it in practice in any industry yet.
Yeah.
Do I think it's coming? Yeah, I think it makes sense. And even I think because there's more inertia in the traditional means, sort of the status quo of the way people are doing inspections now, like helicopters, ground, mobile LiDAR, things like that, right? Things that are getting more traction, but they're still remote sensing. I think that's where sort of one of the biggest opportunities are, just because that is going to use multiple different modalities at different altitudes. That's really where I believe that it's going to end up going, using edge computing on sort of the more, like, say, your satellite constellation. Your satellite constellation's got edge computing. It's making a decision to deploy something else that I can get a better look. That I think is coming. It's not here yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've been a little removed from the actual operations of drones, and so I was like, oh, maybe it's here now. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess I was talking to a guy from MicaSense, and we were talking about the new MicaSense sensor lines up really well with Sentinel. So it's like, oh, Sentinel passes over every couple of weeks or whatever. Well, maybe I saw something interesting, and now I can go fly my MicaSense sensor. So it's kind of it's not a fully automated system, but you can replicate the data that you're getting off of the satellite now with a smaller unit. So
yeah.
And we do have a question here from the audience. Do you think AI is going to eliminate most entry-level geospatial analyst jobs, or do you think those positions will evolve?
I think they'll evolve. Honestly, the goal behind this whole industry is not to put people out of work. The goal is to give them another tool, and that's all it is. It's another tool, for me, a buddy of mine gave me the flying ham sandwich thing a long time ago, and I just use it because it is a dumb tool, and it needs still to have that human in the loop to make sense of what's there. Even with AI, there's still going to be limitations and things outside of the bounds of what is currently able to be processed that will need to have a human say, yes, this makes sense. No, this doesn't make sense. There's always going to be a human in the loop. And I think, because we're the ultimate computational engine, it's hard to program everything that we can do into the drone, especially for some of the complex use cases, like a pandemic drone. I don't think that's going to be a fully automated anything, just because there are going to be error rates that have to be accounted for. There is going to be some sort of, there's still going to be subjectivity. You're just giving more quantitative data to still a more subjective user-powered function.
Yeah, I think so too. And on the kind of on the remote sensing side, I see AI coming in and doing a lot of, so sort of the edge compute stuff where you can't actually be physically there to do it. That will be taken away. But yeah, just like Jason's saying, like at the end of the day, the human's still the one that does the check to say like, yeah, that feels right, or no, that doesn't feel like right. Like Jason's pandemic drone, I'm thinking watching somebody's chest, like maybe it works really well on a t-shirt, but if the guy's wearing a jacket in the wind and it's rustling, it's like, oh, it broke. But that takes 1 second for a human to be like, it broke. But the machine is going to be like, oh no, I was trained to do this one thing. So yeah, you still have to have somebody as a sanity check for it, which is
always,
yeah, kind of makes you feel powerful.
But that,
right?
and to just add on to that question, or add on to the answer, that that opens up a whole new world for lower level GIS technicians, and they don't have to do the simple stuff anymore. It's going to be taken care of. Now, instead of elevating, everyone gets elevated, like technicians or analysts or scientists, right? It's like, and it just opens up more opportunities for those people because they now have a different tool. So it's just a different tool. It's not something that's replacing anyone. I mean, this isn't, I mean, even, I don't know, you look at like the Industrial Revolution, you look at the assembly line, like those things are still people. There's still people operating those things. So it's the same. It's the same type of analogy.
One of the things that you were talking about too, Jason, when we spoke the other day, was with utilities in particular. I happen to have been witness to the fact that they're very slow to adjust to new, monitoring methods and that sort of thing. But you actually brought up the challenge of, if you're relying on like helicopters or something like that for being able to monitor stuff. I mean, how do you do that during something like this when you can't put like two pilots and a co-pilot right next to each other?
Yeah, there's that. So interestingly, I mean, not knowing about the air operations at not knowing fully about some of the air operations at some of these, everyone right now, because of COVID-19, are taking a step back and saying, look, utilities still have wildfire risks. They still have inspection cycles. They still have all these things they can't stop, but they have to rethink, because right now, even with the drones, even though it's a contactless solution, because public perception is still not completely there with the drones, you still need to be sensitive to, everyone's at home. Okay, everyone's at home. What is everyone going to think about these drones flying? Well, we need to think about that. Maybe we have a slower start and we see what the public looks at this, because public is still, the regulatory space is coming along. The public space, I think way more education needs to happen. That's the whole point of why I have this podcast, is just educate of all the things that drones can do that are good, right? They're not just noisy, creepy things, right? There are things that could be very useful. They can save lives. They can find lost hikers. They can, provide another diagnostic tool in the area of COVID-19. So, I mean, there's lots of things that drones can do, and a lot of ingenuity and innovation is happening because of all of this that's going on. And I don't see it slowing down.
And plus, I mean, how else would we get those amazing shots of NFL games, right? If there wasn't a drone, buzzing along over the field constantly.
Nice. Yeah. You got like the good, well, no, it's not a drone, right?
Whatever. It's a copter with a camera.
It's like a wired camera.
Yeah, it's usually a cable mounted system.
Oh, jeez. You guys are killing me.
It should be a drone, though. I know some people that do a lot of drone work for the NFL, and they are using drones quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
And the draft is tonight, so,
Jason, you touched on the noise portion of it. Are drones getting quieter?
So yes and no. I'll answer that because there are some things that are, consumer grade drones, I think you can get specialized props and they're quieter. Then again, you have people that are using hybrid drones for industrial applications that are super loud.
Yeah.
So loud. So it just depends on the use case, right? If I'm flying over people, even helicopters are loud, and they're flying over these utility lines pretty low, making people a little mad. Drones would be a better alternative over those sensitive areas.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking of your delivery scenario. There's thousands of drones now flying over my house. I'm like, this has changed my quality of life.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, if you fly a drone, take it to 200 feet. Do you still hear it?
No.
All right. Like, once it gets a certain distance away, depending on the size of the drone, you're not going to hear it anymore. Only when it's in its, its final descent to, do the delivery, when it gets down to like maybe 30 feet. Yes, you're going to hear the drone, but only for a little bit, and then it's going to elevate and get out of there.
Okay. All right. Take your word on it.
Also, just really quick, I wanted to mention too, because we had a couple people ask about it. We will make sure to post a link to the article that Jason was talking about at the beginning with the recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I just saw it pop up twice. I thought, address it. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Austin. Go for it.
No, I was going to ask actually probably another dumb question. So on your delivery side of things, do you know on the vandalism side of it? So I'm imagining if you have a cable winch that comes down, somebody's going to grab that cable and like pull on it.
So, I mean, yes, there are, I mean, I'm sure they have contingencies for that. I mean, a lot of people, like, I have people joke, they're like, it's kind of like, it's kind of like it's like bingo or whatever. Like, I could just shoot these drones down and get the stuff, right? It's a treasure hunt. Yes, there are going to be bad people doing bad things, and I think they're going to possibly lose some systems. But I think they probably have, my guess is redundant fail safes. If someone were to grab the rope and pull it, probably just break away.
Okay.
Is my thought. It would probably just break away, or there's a user release. Obviously, there's a downward facing camera. If someone walks up to it and they're trying to like steal the loot, right? They're probably just going to let it go, right? I mean, they don't need to lose the drone for the latte that's in the box.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Yeah.
I'm sorry, a latte? Did you just say a
Yeah,
latte?
man, they deliver lattes, muffins. Yeah, they're going to and they're looking at like small businesses too. So it's just, I don't know, it's super cool. It's a cool little thing that people are doing, and it's starting to get some real traction. Obviously, medical deliveries is really where things are exciting right now. But I would say also, I mean, because a lot of this is in places where there are not good ground infrastructure. There's not good ground infrastructure everywhere all over the world. So using an air highway that's unmanned, that allows them to get it faster, and sort of the logistics system behind it. I think, and that's why people like UPS and others are developing these systems. So, because they already understand all the logistics behind it.
Yeah, actually, I just thought of something too. You were talking about the places where these things are being used. I think you had mentioned like Rwanda when we were talking about it the other day. I'm just curious, and maybe you don't have an answer for this. So the way that they're being used there, are Americans really particular about being terrified of drones because they're robots? Or is the rest of the world seem to be more welcoming to the idea?
I think it's a universal thing.
Is
I think
it?
it's pretty universal.
That's all.
Very Minority Report. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll have to tell me how to get that latte, by the way.
For sure.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
On the drone side of things, do you see drones as like their own unit? Or so like I'm thinking of a drone as like a helicopter, and you can put a camera on a helicopter. Or do you see a drone as like a hybrid, like the camera and the drone are becoming one? Like, will these companies start to like vertically integrate all of their pieces into one? Or will we still have like 10 years from now, we're going to have a camera company, and we're going to have a drone company, and we're going to have a winch company, and we're going to have like a payload box company? Or is this all going to become one unit?
That's great. So that's a great question. I would say that it's getting closer to wanting to be vertically integrated. It's not there yet.
Okay.
Like, especially here in the US, like there are companies that are still, looking at battery technology, looking at camera technology, looking at prop technology, like just looking at individual subsystems. And there are system integrators, but those system integrators are more on the application side.
Okay.
Than the actual developer of the system.
Okay.
So yeah, but I mean, if you look at like DJI, right? I mean, DJI, it's all one thing. Like you look at the Phantom 4, it's one system, right?
Yeah.
It's all vertically integrated. It all makes sense. I think there's going to be more and more systems like that. I mean, in the military side, there's tons of them. I would say that we are still not there, but I think it still needs to get there. But I think one of the things that during this sort of proof of concept for drones that's still ongoing, researchers need flexibility, right? They need flexibility to be able to slap this component on, trade this out, put this in. If you just have here is your solution, that doesn't allow for that to happen. So you have to work with what you have, and that's not the best way to do science.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm thinking like down the road. So I know from my perspective, people will be like, oh, here's like drone imagery. That's like totally within your wheelhouse. And it's like, yeah, because it's imagery. And that's like my skill set is imagery. So
yeah,
I'm not so interested in where the imagery came from, because I just see like, oh, you could have put a camera on a pole, or you could have put it on a drone. Like I'm still just interested in the image. But I'm thinking down the road is like, well, does my imager now become the drone as well? Is it all one piece? And I have to now start thinking about like all the other pieces of it, like, yeah, even like acquisitioning, like all of that becomes like part of my image.
it has to. It has to go there. If you look at specific applications, it all needs to come together. Like some things need base stations, some things need Wi-Fi positioning networks because you're operating underground in a mine. You know, like all of these things need to be integrative systems. They can't just, well, I found a camera at Target and I found a Wi-Fi extender at Walmart. You know,
Yeah.
we're gonna see if it works.
Yeah.
That can't happen. Like they have to all be able to talk to each other. That's still a big problem. And well, one of the other problems, and we're not going to get into this, it could be a whole other thing, is standards, right?
Yeah.
You know, these fully integrated systems, they're standards driven, and they should be standards driven. Right now in the drone space, there's a lot of standards. So I think that's one thing. Everyone's creating a standard. We can create a standard right now if we wanted to. We shouldn't. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there doing it, and it's still, those are still very, very specific silos. There's safety standards. There's airmanship standards, there's sensor standards, there's data standards, there's all of these other standards. I mean, ASPRS does it, ASTM, you know, ISO, they're all developing standards for this space, and not all of them play well with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like the vertically integrated idea though, just because I would like the sensor and the whatever platform it's on to be able to work together so that when I get my image, it's ready to go, instead of having to be like, oh, I have to pull data from this other company's IMU, and now I have to have this very specific like stopwatch thing, and now I have to have this camera, and they all have to play perfectly together, or else my image is going to be all wobbly.
Sure.
Yeah, so all right. Yeah, I didn't know if that was like a direction that the industry's going, or if the industry is more going in kind of like that, we don't really need like a piece of scientific equipment. Like if you want to do that, that's a pretty small subset, but we're really interested in like a high resolution RGB camera that's not calibrated. Like we just really want to be able to see your driveway.
And just to be fair, a lot of the use cases within the UAV space currently are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need scientific, you know, they don't need metric cameras. They don't, I mean, there's a lot of systems that, there are some use cases, plenty of use cases and growing, where they need very specific systems, right? Like I need a base station, or I need RTK or PPK. Like I need all of these technologies. Others, yeah, I'm just doing some slam technology with a basic LiDAR imager, and whoop, there we go. So it varies. It's the whole spectrum. So I think that's something that's important to recognize, that it is catering to the entire spectrum. What I see people being successful with are those that specialize into a niche quickly, right? They don't try to be everything to everyone. Like they are, this is what this drone does. This is what this system does. You can use it for this. It's really good at this. And I think that's what's being successful in this market, while it's still trying to come together. So I think that's just, I don't know, something important that I've noticed over the last several years.
Okay. Do you feel like, oh, go ahead.
Nope. Well, I was just going to ask, so out of all the different ways that drones have been used during COVID, which have been the most effective?
Good question. I think the widest use case would be with the speaker drone, right? The social distancing tool. People are, I mean, even if people are laughing at it because the police officer is yelling at them over a drone, they're still complying. People are leaving. So it's keeping officers safe. So, I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest use cases right now, is just as a social distancing monitoring tool. I would say some of the other ones, like using as a disinfectant drone, like flying down streets with an agricultural spray drone, disinfecting, that's been done, but very, very limited. I'm not sure how effective that has been. And then you have obviously the deliveries. The deliveries would probably be number 2, right? I mean, that's something that is been proven out over the last several years, but it's still not ready. I mean, when I say it's not ready for prime time, that just means that the public may not be ready for it. Regulators may not be ready for it. The airspace isn't ready for it, but all of those things are moving together quickly. But yeah, I mean, I think still there's tons of use cases out there for any sort of monitoring. I think the thermal thing during COVID has been an interesting one, because you have a huge uptick in these industrial imagers as like checkpoints to people. Like my dad has one at his office that when they walk in, they have to get scanned, right? They get scanned. So they walk in and they're like, hi, I'm here for work. You know, my name is Jason. Hello. Here's my temperature. You know, here's what's going on. You know, so you have to walk in and you're going to see that. And that's just an adoption of, you know, a new technology that is getting propelled because of COVID-19.
Awesome. Austin, do you have any other questions for Jason before I wrap this up today?
I was gonna, the one last one was, do you see, so on the satellite and even airborne side of things, when large areas of imagery are collected, sometimes there's not necessarily a governing body, but like somebody that's collecting all the data together and then pushing it out to the public. Is there anything like that for drones? So like,
Not yet.
not
No,
yet.
I don't think so.
Like a, yeah, like
Not in
if
that-
NOAA or
You
somebody
have
like that.
stumped Jason. You've stumped him.
I didn't know if there was like a central
Not really.
repository.
I don't think
No?
so. I don't think there's an entity out there that is doing it. Do you think that would be useful? I'm just trying to get ideas now.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I mean, like, so I know like when JPL flies Avarice, they put all their Avarice data in one spot. You can just go download it. Or I mean like Landsat, like that kind of stuff, like you can go grab that from Earth Explorer or wherever you want to grab it from. If there was somebody that, say it was like like a Fed Civil something, and they were using taxpayer money to collect this data, that would be really cool if that data all went somewhere that I could then query it and be like, when was the last time this was flown? Like, does anybody have any high resolution, low altitude over this?
So there are some, right? If you look at some like USGS and others that have starting to look more into drones, they are throwing out there, just like LiDAR data sets, right, are becoming more democratized. I would say drone data is gonna probably get there, but the drones aren't being used at mass scale by the federal government, not really. At least not yet, right? I think it could be coming, but like still it's the individual, you know, prosumer or, you know, drone service provider or large enterprise that's using it, and they're going to have massive data. Cybersecurity is a massive thing, so they're going to have problems with licensing that data for any other use outside, because we're talking about ultra high resolution imagery of a specific subject matter. Usually I would say it's going to be, you're going to be hard pressed to turn the even the legal side to get them to say, yep, we'll let this be dispersed out there. I mean, you'll have like the reverse DJI problem. We're worried that China's spying.
Yeah.
Now we're saying, all right, well, actually we don't care because we're going to push it all out.
Yeah.
That I think, just get people to wrap that around, I think it's going to be problematic.
Yeah. I mean, you could do the whole, like, I mean, with satellites and stuff, they have to reduce the resolution to X amount to be able to push it out to the public. Like, you could do the same thing. But I just didn't know if there was somebody emerging as the repository. Like, is there somewhere I can go query?
Not really. I think the big guys out there, like, you know, the Pix4Ds and the Drone Deploys and the Precision Hawks, the people that are accepting large amounts of data, have they talked about it? Yeah, I know they have. You know, reselling that, you know, pieces of that data, I think that's something. But I think that's one of the things that no one's just saying, here's all the data that we have, we're going to push it back out and say, what can people do with this data? There's not really a crowdsourcing engine that's allowing people to do that. There could be lots of possibilities. It's a good thought for sure.
So we do have a comment here from the audience just saying that in the DC area with the restricted aerospace, they're experimenting with using ground-based drones. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah. And they're doing it in California as well. I think both coasts are doing it. Yeah, these little roving drones that just drive down sidewalks and do deliveries, or, you know, doing scanning, you know, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, just like autonomous navigation in cars, a smaller mission-specific, you know, ground robot. Yeah, definitely something that can happen. It gets around it gets around all of FAA, right? It's not in the air, it's on the ground. So, and it's using a lot of the same technologies and a lot of the same systems. It's a little more complicated because now it's on the ground and you have like pedestrian traffic, and what do you do with that? And I think that those systems what's really good is seeing the system of systems that I think we're going to start to see, that a system of systems of, like, there's ground, satellite, manned aerial, unmanned aerial, all of those, you know, undersea, you know, whatever it happens to be. There's lots of different just lots of different modalities. And I would say that that's something that to see those systems, like the unmanned traffic management systems, unmanned is just unmanned. Doesn't mean it's in the air. It just means that there's unmanned traffic. So I think that's where the industry is going as well, is trying to develop standards and systems that apply to air, ground, sea, all of it.
I think we've hit our time. I think I'm going to wrap it up for this week. Thanks, you guys.
You're
I love
welcome.
doing these, and you guys in particular. Great to talk to you. Love it. Make sure to join us next week because we are bringing back superstar panelist Amanda O'Connor, and she's going to chat with L3 Harris's own Joey Griebel. It should be a pretty good one.
Yeah.
So even Jason agrees. So remember that you can always watch the recorded episodes, and as I mentioned, we'll have the link to the article we were talking about earlier with the recording this week. And you can always get the latest info on how to join the live broadcast at this lovely webinar page on our website. And yeah, you guys, this has been great. Thank you. So until next week, this is Abby Lehman saying, hi, Mom, love you. And reminding everyone that while rugged individualism is a completely American thing and we love it, please be gentle with each other because we still need to get through this together. All right, guys, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.